That's right. You want another Sunday Sesh on the Boyd. And for those of you that are joining us on Facebook Live, I would jump onto the description or see the link in the description. It's worth copying and pasting because you are missing out on the Sephiroth Beats intro theme song to the Boyd right now. And so YouTube listeners, whether you're catching it live or on archive, are able to hear these exclusive tracks from Sephiroth Beats. Definitely worth checking out. But yes, indeed, welcome to the Boyd. As you can see on the title, it is about Princess Mononoke. I don't know if everyone has seen that before. Hold on one moment. Okay. Yeah, so Princess Mononoke is a anime that came out like in '97. Has some pretty famous people that did the voices for it. Actually, stand by one moment. I gotta go back to break real quick so I can shut down some of the background noise that's going on right now. So I'm gonna throw on a Sephiroth Beats track. This is, let's see, one of the instrumental tracks that came out on his, that he just released on his I guess disc, would you call it? LP? I mean, it's vinyl. Yeah, anyway. Keep some Sephiroth Beats for now, and I'll be back in just 2 shakes. Definitely check it out. Sinking City Records. As you can hear, very, very cool stuff. All right, like I said, those of you who are on Facebook Live, jump onto the YouTube channel because I'm going to be sharing some screenshots, or I mean, just some. I don't want to put too much. Last time I put any video stuff, ended up getting a copyright notice or some crap from YouTube. I'm not trying to make that a regular thing because it makes difficulties for me. But let's talk about what's going on. So, gig economy to help sort of bridge the gap between projects and other income, etc. And part of that is well, and what I'm doing right now is doing deliveries at night, food delivery stuff. And so I listen to a lot of stuff while I'm driving, different radio shows, podcasts, music, whatever. I mean, I'm driving around a whole bunch. And so I stumbled upon these guys called Discourse Collective. I believe, from what I've been hearing, that they're anarchists. They lean that way in the political scope of things. They like to dissect history, and like right now they're going over who is it? They just did Kropotkin and Bakunin. Just going over some things about his critiques on different things and whatnot. Anyway, it's an interesting perspective. I'm not really an anarchist per se, but I'm just saying that it was an interesting. Just hearing their takes on some of these books that I haven't read makes me wonder if I should maybe read some of them, or some of them are like, like Bakunin, I probably won't read him, but we'll see. Anyway, one of the things they actually discussed was Princess Mononoke, and I don't really want to rehash what they went over, but the reason why I wanted to comment on it is because when they were talking about the movie, something really struck me. When they got all the way to the end, they did a brief synopsis, and when they got all the way to the end, there was one of the hosts asked the question of, it would, what would the sequel be like? Wouldn't it be great to see a sequel to this anime? And the other host said, well, maybe we're living the sequel. Okay. And I didn't really agree with that. And so I really wanted to give my take on it, because I saw, when I went later after hearing this, I heard their breakdown of the movie prior to watching the movie. It sort of made me want to go check out this movie that they're making. Like, I mean, it's the anime. I never really, even despite living in Japan and stuff, I never was really deep into anime that much. And so I thought it might be an opportunity to sort of get into some things that I slept on back in the day. And so that's what spurred me into watching Princess Mononoke. So maybe this will make you, if you haven't watched it, watch Princess Mononoke. And maybe if you've already seen it through somewhat of a lens that or at least a perspective that I ended up viewing it from, which I don't know that it's from any direct way. I mean, obviously it was influenced to some degree by their critique, I would imagine, just by default, because I heard it first. But like I said, I came away from it with a different take than what they came from, despite hearing what they thought first. One of the major reasons I wanted to bring it up was this notion of sort of the culture that has sort of spawned over time, and really, how do we grasp what culture was like in a contemporary fashion, right? People talk about presentism, or basically trying to impart values of the present into the past when the contemporary mode of existence was different. And I can see that where that can be a tricky thing. I mean, humanity seems to have evolved over time as far as, to some degree, barbarism and other things that have existed. I'm sure there's been a lot of good things also that probably existed. Maybe we just don't know about it. I mean, who dictates what's in history and what it sounds like and what it looks like? So what the truth is and what is conveyed can often be two different things. And so that brings us to our present reality, where do we really understand reality, and is it accessible to all of us? If you think about science, one of the reasons why science, quote unquote science, this big monolith thing that people talk about a lot of times, is so, I don't want to say scary, but seems like it's in the realm of faith, is because it is so inaccessible to the quote unquote lay person. You have to be accredited or have part of a grant program or something to take part in really major science. And I think that alienates a lot of us from what it is. So there, in a way, it may as well be the church. It may as well be clergy, the way that science is working now, into to some degree. Now, in the other, and yeah, actually, really, you in a way, you have to pay tithing to the lords of science. That's where I think a big problem is. Let's say right now, if I'm in starving artist status, but I want to learn about something, especially new things, and I want to read the actual scientific study, not someone's interpretation of that study, I would have to go and access that scientific journal or scientific database that it has, or that houses that research, and then I could access it. But if that's behind a paywall of some sort, then if I can't afford to pay it, then I don't have access to that science. And so who then can access the science? And then also, by accessing the science, do I really understand it? And I can't remember if I brought this metaphor up. I probably did. It's one of my favorite metaphors to bring up, but metaphors, I guess. It's a scene from A Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. When I can't even remember her name, but Zhang Ziyi's character, the apprentice, has learned more than the teacher because the apprentice was of the aristocracy and was able to read, and the teacher, who didn't come from that upbringing, couldn't read and deciphered through the pictures only, was not able to really understand the nuances that were written in the text describing the pictures. So she had to fill in the gaps on her own, just based on the pictures. Anyway, so access to information does not necessarily equate to understanding or intelligence or much anything, really. There's a dangerous saying that was going around for a while about being in the age of information, that ignorance is a choice. And I would argue that ignorance is not understanding and not really knowing about something, or not knowing of it. But even still, let's say I've got the plans for a spacecraft or something. That doesn't necessarily mean just because I have access to it that I have understanding of it, that I have actual cognitive access to it. So that's a vastly different thing. And then also, it's just the nature of the internet, the nature of capitalism, the nature of tribalism, all of these things coalesce and create this sort of unknowable reality that the objective truth is obfuscated behind somebody else's story, and everybody is claimed to have a bias or claimed to have a specific agenda, and they might. I mean, I'm not saying they don't, but that's the problem. I mean, I think we have lost any sense of culture to where we would ensure that at least we could herald one organization or something as ultimate truth, to where we could say, look, I don't care what party you're on or whatever ideological sense you have, this person or this organization is rooted in truth. And I think that because we haven't really been vigilant as a people over power, that we have lost pretty much all of our power, unless we wake up as a group of people, as a singular group of people, if we unite as a group of people. But until then, there's going to be what would in a sense James Madison would have called an opulent minority that will direct how society works. And I would ask you guys, do you believe that there's an opulent minority that should be running running things the way they are? You know, Edward Bernays, the father, literal father of propaganda, believed in this idea as well, that there should be specific, certain social architects that will lead society in a benevolent manner, or whatever manner they decide, really. And they've used that. Literally, it's been around 100 years now. So in 100 years, how fast and how far has human sophistication come to where propaganda in any form, in any manner, can manipulate the way you see things? And of course, we have that idiotic saying that the corporate world loves to say, that I hate because it's fake and it's false and it makes us lazy, is perception is reality, right? That is the word, the literal word of the forked tongue. That is the word of the propagandist. Those are the words of the PR wizard, you see. And so, yeah, I don't like that. It breeds ignorance. It breeds laziness that I simply perceive, therefore it is. And that's lazy. That's wrong, you know. And it goes into the distortions of reality and the contradictions of our own reality, where you can have a situation where, you know, your employer or somebody out there in the world will tell you, well, perception is reality, so fake it till you make it, or whatever. And then on the other side, we tell people, don't judge a book by its cover, right? So, you know, we don't necessarily resonate with a singular ideal to say either, hey, don't judge a book by its cover, and let's dig and learn who these people really are. And instead of, hey, perception is reality, so at least pretend to be what you're not. Why don't you become that thing, and so that it is a reality, instead of, well, it's their reality because that's how they perceive it. You know, because because some people perceive the world as flat, then therefore it must be flat because that's their reality, right? Is that, you know, it starts getting sort of silly. And we then start allowing for reality to be covered, you know, and argued, when there really should be a singular reality, somehow, right? I mean, something happened, and therefore there's a causal chain of events. The problem becomes, it becomes very complex, and the recollection of the events becomes tainted by the biases of the people recording those events and then interpreting those events. And so it's a problem that we've had through history, surely. However, I think that it is extremely tricky right now, because we are in a period where there are groups of people that are able to manifest a reality that fits whatever narrative they need in order to manipulate a public that wants to resonate back with that, like a feedback loop. And once we hit that resonating frequency, we get that feedback and it starts popping eardrums. But some people are so deeply entrenched into these realities, and it's part of their identity, to the point where if you challenge that or any types of notions that they have or belief systems, it becomes a challenge to them personally. Now, if you guys, just a reminder, if you're joining in on Facebook, I would jump over to the YouTube channel. That way you can take a look at some of the screenshots and the audio that play that I have on the show. So the real show is actually on the is actually on YouTube, Facebook Live. This is sort of a notification to let you know to go to the YouTube channel, because again, you're missing out on a lot of content right now. And so, yeah, and it looks like my phone, I don't know if my phone is jacked up right now. Hey, what's up, Mark? Mark says hi. I think my phone's probably jacked up on Facebook Live. So anyway, if you checked out Facebook Live, jump onto the YouTube channel, and you can. I hope this is the right YouTube channel. Let's see. Yeah, I believe so. Go over to the YouTube channel, and you'll be able to see all of the extra media. Oh no, I think that's actually the wrong YouTube channel. Let me make sure that I've got the right YouTube channel. Maybe Paul been trying to jump on and I screwed it up. I don't know what I put there then. Maybe I can fix it. Looks pretty much like the right link. All right, stand by. Let me try to fix this thing. Does it still keep filming? All right. Yeah, that's the same. Can I edit this? Oh, maybe because I don't know. Here, I had a mobile link, I think. Did that do it? Hope this worked. No, how come it said it didn't exist before? Now it's. Oh my God. All right. Anyway. So yes, hopefully things will work out. If you are watching on Facebook Live, I would jump onto the YouTube channel. That way, you can see some of the. That way, you can see some of the media that I'll be sharing, which includes some screenshots. But anyway. God, what was I talking about? Now I got distracted. But just going back to thinking about the what's that? Oh, sorry, YouTube. Got stuff going on here. Okay, so getting back to man, I can't even remember exactly what I was talking about. I got distracted by Facebook. But we live in a time where things are full of contradictions. In our, again, the perception is reality thing. Our perceptions are molded, so it isn't reality. We have to fight the molding of this perception that's happening all around us all the time. Like, think about the company you work for. What kind of, let's say if there was something bad that happened, what kind of information would go out, and how would they try to make it look? And would it be exactly the truth? Would it be a distortion slightly of the truth? Would it use extra polished words to convey this truth? Those are questions that you should be asking, right? And that you can look at it in an honest way, hopefully, right, in an objective way. And I think a lot of people that I run into are in a position where they wouldn't even consider looking at anything else. And I think that becomes really dangerous right now. And I think the alienation of science with the rest of the quote unquote lay people, where we have to sort of trust on high to these people that we don't really, get to, in some ways don't get to access what they've done. And I think who was it, Adam Schwartz, was trying to release all of this information for free to the public, and then he just sort of disappeared, or something happened to him. He hacked into, I think it was MIT or something, I don't remember for sure. But so one of the things that I got from Princess Mononoke, if you're not familiar with it, I'll go through a massively fast synopsis that is going to leave out a ton of things. But the general story is that you have this prince who has to, out of nowhere, has to fight this demon that turns out to be a boar, like a wild boar that has been possessed. It's like this giant wild boar that's it's in a different time in Japan. So this is, they say, the time of gods and spirits and things like that. And so it's set in feudal Japan, but right at the crest, or not crest, but introduction of capitalism. So if you look at the threads of what's happening, and whether or not, I don't know if I don't know much about the director and the writer of this film. The people that were giving their critique had much more depth of knowledge in what this person has done in the past. But whether or not the inclusion of the samurai feudal element of Japanese culture, and there's this place called Iron Town in this anime, where there's this lady that runs things over there, and she basically runs this iron mill and supplies iron and rifles to and creates these rifles to sell to the countryside and to the feudal masters and whoever. So there's in doing so, she has started to amass control. And so so in giving you some of the background, she ends up getting extremely wealthy, and she starts buying up all the contracts of all of the prostitutes in all of the brothels. Yeah, this is in the anime, so you should check it out. It's pretty cool. So she buys up all their contracts, and so she hires them, basically buys them, it's, I guess, servants or slaves or whatever. I don't know how exactly that worked in Japan. But she buys out their contracts, and they now live in an iron town, and they work these bellows through most of the week. And it's a pretty tough life, but they always compare it back to living in the brothel. So, anything's better than that. So, living a tough life in Iron Town as basically, the lady, I think Hibashi, or I don't remember her name, Hiboshi. Anyway, the lady, they become the lady's labor. And so to them, it's better off to do this than to go back into the brothel. And so through this time, she starts buying up all of these women, and then also there's some men that are somehow engaged in Irontown, and she then, in her own right, becomes a powerful. Irontown itself becomes a power, a place of, a seat of power, and so now, in a way, you see a conflict between the feudal lords and the samurai, and the lady and her iron town, and they both want access to labor. They both want access to resources, to land, and all of these things. And so there's this struggle through both methods of living to take power over the earth. And I don't, to some degree, the samurai part you don't see that so much through the feudal system or through the samurai. It's just the samurai are fighting against the lady, and it seems like it's for resource and power. I might have to go back and watch it again. I probably missed it. I only watched it once, so I'm sure I missed stuff. Sometimes you got to watch things a couple times. Anyway, that's sort of some of the backdrop of what's going on. And so the prince that fights this demonic boar, anyway, he gets infected and by the demon, and so he gets then banished. For this wise lady says, hey, you're not allowed to live in this city anymore or town anymore with us, so you have to go. And there's also some cultural aspect in there. It seems like they seem to be like this tribe of people from in ancient Japan that were in connection with Japan, because he seems to be familiar with the forest and familiar with the forest spirits, and the samurai and Iron Town folk see the forest spirits and the forest itself a lot of times as adversaries. That you don't pass through the forest alive, or you don't make it through alive from in the forest. Whereas the prince has always been, it seems, because this is how he acts through the whole thing, has always been in communication with nature and working in compliance with nature. At least his people seem to be that way. So he ends up, the wise lady, before she lets him go out of the village, she says, hey, it turns out there's a hunk of metal that was lodged in the boar. We think that's what killed it. They had a little forensic science episode kick in, and they do their Princess Mononoke forensic files, and they find they trace the rifle markings and see that, hey, this bullet or this hunk of iron looks like it probably came from the west, and so you need to go to the west and find what happened. So he goes on this trek. He ends up running into the lady, and on his way there runs into the lady, who with her team of people are carrying resources and ore from, I believe this is what they're carrying, from one area of the mountainside to Iron Town, or they're moving something, might be a shipment or something. And anyway, they end up getting attacked by there's one of the protagonists that lives in the forest, who supposedly is, I guess, Princess Mononoke, but she is a person of the forest. She was adopted basically by a wolf god. Anyway, this part's not as important. So, long story, let's skip all the way to the part that's relevant in this end. So he ends up meeting this priest kind of guy. I don't know if he's really a priest. He meets basically the head. He's like a monk, and he's the head of a group of riflemen that are in alliance with Iron Town. But they're only in alliance with Irontown in so much that the lady has promised that she will deliver the head of the spirit of the forest. Yeah, has she has to help deliver the head to Jigo. That's the guy's name, Jigo the monk, who's actually voiced by Billy Bob Thornton. And Claire Danes is in this, voices in this movie. So is Minnie Driver, and there's a bunch of other people, Jada Pinkett Smith, I think. Anyhow, what was I going to say? Yes, all those voices. Oh yeah, Jigo. He meets Jigo, and he tells him his story. So the prince tells Jigo the story. Jigo says, "Okay, yeah, I don't, whatever. Just go talk to these people, in Irontown and see what's going on." And I think he knows what's happening, but he just shoos him along to go to Irontown. Is what I got from it. Anyway, Jigo is on the quest to get the head of the spirit of the forest in order to grant the emperor, because the emperor will pay him a large sum of money to pay him. The emperor will then get immortality. So if he gets the head of the spirit, then he will get immortality and pay this Jigo guy large sums of money. And that's sort of how that goes, right? And the Prince Ashitaka, he understands the importance of the spirit of the forest and of nature and of life, basically, what this is. So what I'm going to do is show you, and there's a specific line that I think that is very poignant in here. And I think this is what really sums up what the metaphor of Princess Mononoke really is, I believe. And let me show you a couple things real quick here. So I'm going to show you some pictures. Let me see if this will work. It might be a better way to do this, because then I don't have to. I just thought about it. All right, let me see if this works. Yes. All right, let me do this. All right, so this will, man, I wish I would have thought of this sooner. This would make it really cool. All right, so I'm going to show you some pictures and give you some imagery of who is who in a moment. But there's a situation here where, the Jigo's trying to get the head of the spirit, and I'm going to spoil the movie for you real quick here, but they do get the head, and what ends up happening is when the head of when the spirit becomes decapitated, it sort of just pops and becomes this mass of jelly-looking stuff, almost like tar or black oily stuff, and it starts gooping around on the like in the forest, and anything it touches dies. And so you know, I think that that becomes a big metaphor in of itself. And so they kill, or basically the lady shoots the head off the spirit of the forest. Let me show you the spirit of the forest. So this is the spirit of the forest, and sort of has this humanoid looking face. Weird. Anyway, this is the spirit of the forest, and the spirit is in the process of changing. So what happens is every night when the moon, whoops, I don't want to show this yet. So every night when the moon hits the certain place in the forest, and if the spirit is standing there, it will transform into this night walker who will walk around, and every step that the night walker takes sort of like makes life occur and stuff like that. And it's just sort of this being that goes out into the forest. And so what happens is during this transition phase, when the spirit of the forest is turning into the night walker that roams around in the forest, the lady shoots his head off, and he becomes this mass of death that just spurts around, and he walks, and then eventually this mass takes on humanoid form, and yeah, eventually the mass takes on humanoid form and is walking around searching for its head. And in doing so, while it's searching and searching for its head, calling for its head, anything that the that black ooze touches dies. So the whole forest is starting to die. Everything's dying all around. It's really bad. So here's Jigo, and so Jigo is the guy that wants to have the head for himself, so that so he can give it to the emperor, so that he gets paid. And there's Prince Ashitaka. So Prince Ashitaka wants to get the spirit of the forest back from the head, so he can from the spirit and give it back to the spirit. And eventually, Jigo gets confronted by Prince Ashitaka, and he gets the prince says, you know, that he proclaims that he's going to give the creature back his head. So I'm going to read to you the actual transcript from the movie. Okay, so this is Prince Ashitaka talking to Jigo. Most of the dialogue is Jigo, but first it's Prince Ashitaka. I'm giving the creature back its head. Put the box down and back away. Give the head back now. Oh wait, hold on. Let me change these pictures. So some Jigo, get some Jigo. I mean Ashitaka. I'm giving the creature back its head. Put the box down and back away. Give the head back now? Come on, boy. Don't be silly. Now, when the sun's about to come up... hold on, let me pause this. When the sun's about to come up, look, he's brainless, swollen, life-sucking god of death. At sunrise, he'll vanish. Sir, and then this is some other guy. Sir, it's coming. We've got to get out of here. Look, everybody wants everything. That's the way the world is. But I might actually get it. Don't force me to kill you. Oh dear, you make it sound so very easy. You really ought to relax. And then he goes and does a flying kick at the guy, at Prince Ashitaka. And I think that is a very poignant statement. So what I think is happening, you know, the assessment that the podcast folks gave about the movie was that, you know, it's sort of a battle in a way. It's showing the battle or transition between feudalism and capitalism, and both of their the impact of humanity and humanity's exploits on nature, and humanity's disregard for nature. And Jigo's words are the most, are really what I think sums up our time. And I think that you know, in the end, Ashitaka gives the head back to the spirit, and the spirit doesn't necessarily get repaired. The spirit then just sort of falls back, and like as if it died, and a blast of energy or something sweeps across the ground, and everything becomes, you know, most of the signs of humanity are wiped away in this like massive breeze, like a gale force wind, and all these people are very scared and whatnot. And in its place, it looks as if nature has done a 20-year reclamation instantly. And so I think in all, I think a lot of what they were saying really makes sense, that you can look at the history of changes in human activity and human organization. It could be feudalism, it can be capitalism, but there's a movement that goes away from the original, which Ashitaka was from, which was this coalescing of, not coalescing, like this sort of a cooperation with nature, right? And they lived in tune with nature. But the feudal empire didn't really do that. You know, you had to pay your tithing to the shogun, and all that kind of stuff. And you know, you end up having to turn everything into something to create more riches for the shogun or for the emperor or whoever. And the capitalists end up doing the same thing. There is a ruse about the hand of the market. In reality, as far as labor goes, the labor market itself is very one-sided to the favor of capital. And because of time being of the essence, really, that's the major variable. And because of that, because time is such a abstract concept, we see that people forget to even mention it a lot of time in their assessments of, you know, looking at the realities of the market between labor and the balance of power between labor and capital. But his words mean a lot, because I think that is the mentality of Wetiko. That is the mentality of what causes capitalism to fail. And it can cause communism to fail. It is what causes systems to fail, the self-absorbed attitude. And what we see here is Jigo's willingness to kill the spirit of the forest, to see the damage that occurs, the death, the just unmitigated, stupid death that occurs when nature has lost its faculties because of humanity. And so I think that's symbolized by number one, the fact that we would harness nature to the point of destroying it in order to access its resources, right? And in a way, I think that that maybe this is a symbol. It symbolizes the struggle that we end up being part of. This struggle between nature and between what we want to be, humans, what we keep striving for somehow for whatever reason, and what we were or how we are in nature. that duality, I think, is summed up in the moment that the head is chopped off of the spirit of nature, or the spirit of the forest. We've already derailed and decoupled ourselves from nature, and the capitalists really, and I think that's symbolic in the lady, Hiboshi or Hibashi, whatever her name is, that the lady with her modern rifle shoots off the head of the spirit of the forest so that Jigo can make his temporary money, right? So here's a permanent damage in order to fulfill a temporary want. And that temporary want is fulfilled by serving the needs of someone who is so self-centered that they would be willing to sacrifice the world for immortality, the life essence of the earth for their own immortality, and someone's willing to fetch it for them for the right price. You know, when people talk to me about things, and we start getting sort of deep and it sounds like a conspiracy theory, I pause for a moment. I ask them a thought exercise and say, you know, if you had all the money in the world and money wasn't an object, and let's pretend there's a person out there in the world that wants something done. So it doesn't have to be you. It could be somebody else, somebody that's not very scrupulous. How much would it cost in real numbers, in real dollars? How much would it cost to hire a assassin or a team of assassins, whatever you got to do, or bully or strongman somebody to threaten or otherwise coerce or force someone to do your will? So let's say, for instance, you're a rich person and you run, I don't know, I'm just going to pick on sugar because it's been in the news lately. Let's say you run a sugar plantation and you want to be able to dump your fertilizer water and runoff water just wherever it ends up dumping, and you don't want to have to pay to have some kind of special retention pond that's lined with concrete and some barriers and this and that to keep the Monsanto out from the river, or the nitrates and whatnot, and other nitrogen and probably other stuff. I think it's, what is that? There's another. I know nitrogen's a big thing. What was I going to say? I want to say phosphorus too. I think phosphorus. I don't remember. But the let's say they decide that they don't like this politician that's going to make them shut down their operations, or they have to do this, put in this extra expensive environmental thing. Could it be possible? How much would it cost to hire somebody that couldn't trace back to you? That somebody that, if caught, would bite a cyanide pill? Like, how much does that cost? That amount of loyalty, and they'll put a real number on it. And almost always, someone comes up with a number like, I mean, the highest I've heard is like 100 million or something like that. And then I say, okay, 100 million is a lot of money, but do you think that there's somebody in your state that could afford to pay that 100 million to have that happen? Do you think there's someone in this country that could pay 100 million to have something happen if it would save them $1 billion, right? If they could make 10 times the return, would they do it? Right. And those are the numbers we're talking about. And that's the disparity of wealth that we're talking about. And that is where Jigo comes in. He is willing to do that. I remember having a conversation with a neighbor of mine that was talking about all the merits of capitalism and the free market in the hand of the benevolent market. And I said, that sounds great, but it's not true. And he's like, well, how so? Of course it's true. I'm like, no, it's not. Otherwise things wouldn't be extinct. He's like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, supply and demand would dictate that the supply would dwindle so low that the demand would drop as well, because the ability to access the capital to get that, because the price would be so exorbitant that you would no longer have the same demand anymore. Except they always forget the Jigo of the world. They always forget the folks that'll slip through the cracks to find their way past the guards so that they can snag something, right? That is part of the capitalist market too. And we see that, they always want to say no government, no government, no government. Well, who stops the poachers, right? Because capitalism would say, we're going to let it go until extinction, because the Jigo will come out, and what will he say, right? He's going to say, look, everybody wants everything. That's the way the world is. Is that true? Well, maybe I would say it's not true. How many people do you know? Maybe it's true for you because you want the world, but how many people do you know would be perfectly happy working and doing what they love to do and just raising their family and making sure they're not destitute? How many people would be perfectly happy with that kind of life? And to say that everybody wants everything, that's the way the world is to define the world by the couple psychopaths that might end up in enough power to be the veneer that is on the outside layer of the world, hiding the reality, the perception of that reality, that distortion of reality. Look, everybody wants everything. That's the way the world is. But I might actually get it. Don't force me to kill you, right? So at the point of violence, the capitalist will acquire, right? I might actually get it. Now you could flip this. You could flip this to say, if this was in a Politburo or some kind of communist bureaucracy, you could flip it to that. But that also resonates with my point that without critiquing and looking at what is going on in capitalism, you don't realize that the same crazy ideas that people have for success in capitalism are the same crazy words that you would say about the bureaucracy of communism. Say, well, if you don't like your station in life, you can pull yourself up by your bootstraps and you can go start a business. And if you start a successful business, then society is going to reward you. And if you can exploit more labor and at the smallest potential cost of labor to the maximal potential profit, then you'll get tons of money. And then someday you'll be super rich. Right? So number one, what is the success rate of those, of people starting businesses? So now we have people seriously saying, hey, something with a barely 5% or 10% or whatever stupid low idiot percent success rate should be the solution to the masses not liking where they are as far as wages, right? So that sounds pretty stupid, right? But that is coming out of the mouths of people who swear they're smart. There are many layers to what is happening, the effect of what is actually occurring. So if we don't look at these things objectively, we tend to be blind to them, right? So we can't improve and do better if we don't see our faults. We have to recognize that by saying, hey, if you don't like it, you can create your own job and then just go do that, or your own enterprise. Well, that's not going to work for everybody. Not everyone's made to do that. Go try it. Not everybody can necessarily go be an entrepreneur. It's not for everybody. And just because it's not for everybody doesn't mean the other people should be punished just because you're good at it. That is the pervasive system. if you're able to manipulate the system to your ends, that doesn't mean that you're a good person. That just means you know how to manipulate a system. I can contrast this, or I can compare it, I guess, to someone in communism to say, hey, if you don't like where your station is in life, well, you could study really hard and then you could jump into the Politburo for agriculture, or you could jump into you could be the leader of the Politburo for defense. You'll be in the Ministry of Truth. You'll be in a dibba-dibba-doo, right? So it's just the same words put into a different structure. So there's a problem with the structure. I'm critiquing the structure. Telling me to go be a cog in the next part of the structure to exacerbate the structure is not an answer, right? We have to look at the tendencies of, now that we've going back to Princess Mononoke, the fact that Jigo can flippantly ignore the death and destruction that is occurring around him in order to still attempt to make his reward. This temporal piece of reward, he's willing to create full death and a permanent death to other living things. And think about the major companies that are going on, that are out here. The psychopathy, the sociopathy, whatever you want to call it. It's Jigo. That's personified by Jigo. These guys that are willing to shoot off the head of nature in order to extract the maximum amount and get their reward. Those are the people that are willing to kill the last rhino to make that 10 grand off the horn. Those are the people that are willing to kill the last of anything in order to make that money, or go ahead and kill a whole pod of dolphins because it'll make some money, or whatever, kill a whole bunch of chickens because it'll make a bunch of money. I mean, someday there's going to be a realization, maybe hundreds of years from now, because of the continual awakening of the human mind and what we've learned, what we're learning about consciousness now, what we're learning about emotions, what we're learning about about life itself. I think we're going to find that we are living in a wallowing mistake now, when we look back on how we've treated other living beings on this planet during this time. And I think what Princess Mononoke shows us is when we've decoupled ourselves from nature and we have been willing to let the dumb beast of death, what does he say? Why, give the head back now. Come on, don't be silly. So this is like, why are we going to give the head back? We're going to try to restore nature to its original pristine form, right? And basically beg for forgiveness. Even when we do, we can't completely fix. Princess Mononoke shows us we can't completely fix nature. But nature, instead of, in the spirit of the forest, instead of manifesting itself in a physical form as this deer human thing and that turns into the night walker thing, it becomes a pervasive force that is that envelops all living. It is like the force, right? And all living things and this and that, and it just wants them to live. So I think there's a lesson in there. So there isn't so much that I don't think we're living the sequel. We're living the point where Jigo has a choice to let go of, or actually Prince Ashitaka, because Jigo begins fighting for his right to take the head of the beast and bring it to the emperor. The Prince Ashitaka has to basically fight him off for it. And so that might mean that in order to change the course of death and destruction that's occurring, because again, remember, without its head, the spirit of the forest turned into the spirit of death. And as it searched for its head, all things that the spirit of death touched started to die. So if we look at what is humanity doing with Fukushima, with the irradiating the Pacific Ocean, and which touches all bodies on this planet, which then also touches all shores on this planet. And so now I mean, do you know, again, in our distance from science, how much irradiation has our ocean sustained? I don't know. Do you really know? How do you really know? If you have access to the scientific reports, please, by all means, link them in the description or in the comments section. I would love to get some info about that. Oh, look, looks like Esteban. Sorry, Esteban, if you're still on. Looks like I missed him. So I accidentally had the YouTube chat covered up for whatever reason, and so I missed Esteban. He said those two examples were great. And which do you think is easier to accomplish, moving up in society, in capitalism, or in communism? Which chat? Which we comment on Facebook or YouTube? I would say YouTube for sure. Esteban, I'm really sorry that I missed you there. I had a bunch of windows in the wrong place, and I missed the comment section this whole time. But please, those of you that are tuned into the show, bring your ideas and your questions, and I'd love to tackle them. So Esteban, thank you for tuning in. Number one, and so let's talk about your question. In those two examples, which do you think is easier to accomplish moving up in society, in capitalism or communism? And honestly, if you look at Marxist communism, from my take on I read the Communist Manifesto a while back. I think it's been over a year now since I've read it. But I believe in that notion of communism. Like the one I gave is really a false notion, a false description of communism, because communism, by his definition, is a stateless, classless society where people simply work together to make things. That we work communally with things, and there's not a hierarchy and thing. And I don't know exactly how that works. And then again, it becomes this idealistic, I think, sort of fantasy. But on the flip side, I would say that a pure free market is also a fantasy, because markets always get manipulated by power and money, right? And you could say that markets get manipulated by the government, but by the government, how does the government get manipulated? It gets manipulated by money, which is caused by the capital, and capital accumulation has power to create additional capital. That's how, it already that's how it works. The finance guys make their money that way. Take capital, invest it into something else, and then create, hopefully, in another mechanism to create additional capital. And so but I guess since communism in its pure form is sort of idealistic fantasy, just like free market capitalism is idealistic fantasy, unless we probably won't hit any ideal. Either one would be utopian, right? And I don't think we can make it to utopia. I think we have a step to go before then. We're not wise as beings yet. We just simply aren't. We are torn apart through tribalism, through religion, through false divisions. So many things that distort reality from us, that we aren't able to share the same reality. And that's what makes humanity so powerful. The shared experience is what has brought us from, the plains and the savannas of of nature to where we are now. And it's not capitalism per se, it's the ability to build upon knowledge, you know, that it continues to build upon itself in ever more sophisticated layers of knowledge. And that's something I think that we as beings also let escape, because it's hard. It's hard to know the accumulated knowledge. It's hard to gather all of that. But let's wrap up. Let me wrap up the Princess Mononoke breakdown, and sort of I'll leave it at that. And you know, hopefully we'll get some views and some comments that can sort of expand the conversation some more. So Esteban, you know, I think to just answer your question without deflecting to somewhere else, I think they both have their game. You have to play the game. So if you're good at playing the capitalism game, then you can make it in capitalism. If you're good at playing the communism game and kissing ass, or whatever method of social currency or bureaucratic currency, if you're able to amass that currency, you too can gain that same power or prestige within the hierarchy of society. And because we are still basic, I think is the end of that, the reality of that. We can't transcend our own selfishness right now. Most of us can't do that. And so I will never make it to Marxist communism because of that, and we won't make it to idyllic free market capitalism because of that. Because free market capitalism also requires an informed public, because people should be informed about the product to make wise, informed decisions. They need to be informed about their labor relations. They need to be informed about anything that happens in the market where consumers get decisions. They should be informed in a way that they can truly understand and comprehend the nature of the competition in the marketplace. But the goal of the capitalist is to obscure that to whatever degree they can, to present the most positive image, whether it's true or not. And you know, it would be the capitalist thing to do in this situation, if ever the question becomes, should I lie or should I not? The capitalist answer isn't simply, I don't lie, so therefore no. It is, how much will it cost to lie versus how much will I lose if I tell the truth? Right? You know, if I get caught lying, what's the cost? If I tell the truth now, what's the cost? Whichever costs less is the way I go. So what's the moral code? Going back to Princess Mononoke. So Jigo tries to take the head, fights Prince Ashitaka to be able to do that. So to me, that in a way shows that if any change is going to happen, we're going to have to fight. Someone's going to have to put up a fight, because the capitalists and those who enable capitalism, basically the sellouts, the class traders, the Jigos who will take the money of the capitalists and who will do the assassination and bite the cyanide pill. Those people are out there, and they will attempt to thwart the efforts to reunite the spirit with its head, you know. And you know, if we are able to have a reunification, it's never going to be the same. We already know that. We've now escaped nature. We'll never be quite the same. But as in the end of that movie of Princess Mononoke, they vow to rebuild Irontown in a way that connects and lives in harmony with nature. So they haven't abandoned technology, and they haven't abandoned even commerce. They haven't abandoned the idea of relighting the bellows and bringing Irontown to work again. But the notion is to bring it up in harmony with nature now. And I think what Princess Mononoke is showing us is where we are right now is at the Jigo level, that we haven't returned the head back, and we are still spewing the dumb beast. What does he call it? Is a brainless, swollen, life-sucking god of death. That has been unleashed. So we have Monsanto, we have any kind of petroleum, we have the irradiation of Fukushima, all of these things where death and destruction gets laid out and meted out across Earth, and we can't turn that backwards. All those deaths, all those lives that were lost can't be turned backwards, even if we look at war, even. Because that's a decoupling of nature. We don't need to fight and kill like that. We have psychopaths that are running our society, and people lazily, in their perception of reality, define humanity by the actions of psychopaths that happen to be leaders at the time, instead of the reality of humanity, which is to follow, right? There's a couple key things. If you've listened to my podcast in the past, you know that I believe that humans are innately good, but that humans are followers by nature, that we're a communal pack animal, and therefore we will follow a leader, and we seek a leader. And some of us become the leaders, and some of us should be leaders who become leaders. And oftentimes those who seek the leadership position become the worst leaders because they've sought it, and what is their motive for seeking it? And is it altruism? Though I believe altruism is a default mode of humankind. And some people would say, well, I believe there's a Friends episode that said that threw out the notion that all people are altruistic because ultimately they will get paid back. And I say that might be the case, but why do you eat? Why do you drink? When you're thirsty, you drink, and do you get paid back? Right? It's something that you feel the need to do. When I'm hungry, I eat, and I get paid back through satiation. The satiety that I feel. Is that my payback? So in that same sense, me doing philanthropic work or helping somebody, sometimes helping them despite not wanting to help them, just knowing that person's in a tight spot. If I was in a tight spot, I would wish I was there to help. Someone was there to help me. I'm never around someone who can help me. I can help someone else. Maybe I'll help them. And I go through that kind of thing. And maybe that's a weird self-centered way of looking at it, but I end up helping all these people. So I don't know if that's a way for me to make myself feel better, or if it's simply something that like, for instance, if I saw an injured person on the side of the road, I would go and help them. Not because I think I'm going to get something in the end, or like, oh, I can't wait to feel good. I'm going to get the feel good feeling. It's like, if I stub my toe, I seek relief. If I see this grief, I seek relief, right? I see their grief, I seek their relief to help them. It's an innate thing. Some people have it, some people don't. I believe a majority have it, and some people don't, and they are psychopaths. And it's okay. Psychopaths live in our world with us. But we have to be aware of that. And they have to be aware of that. And there are pro-social psychopaths out there that can live in society as psychopaths without actually like killing people and stuff like that. So in summation, Princess Mononoke, I believe it's really a testament about human structures, human mechanisms of organization, and their damage to nature, and their disregard for nature, and their need for humanity to realign with nature. But in order to do that, we have to fight off the jigos of the world and the unseen. Notice, if you watch this movie, I don't believe we ever see the emperor. So the emperor is the unseen ultimate, the Illuminati, the globalists. That is the emperor, right? The one who will call the shot, to have the jigo out there, get the head of the spirit and release this death. Go ahead. Hey, go drive this or go drill these holes in these wells. And I've worked for the oil fields before. I've been part of that operation of getting into, you know, the extraction of resource. And to the credit of most of the people I work with, most of them, they understood nature to some degree, and they were hunters. They didn't want to destroy nature, but some of them would disregard nature on purpose just to piss off liberals or to piss off a hippie or something like that. And so there, at the end of the day, nature suffers because they feel they don't like the people who are advocates for nature. And this is the neurosis that we have in our society, that people would actually do that because it idealistically, in their realm of idealism, works against an opposite idealism, and therefore they get pleasure. And that's just I've seen it happen. I know it exists. It makes you lose hope a little bit, you know, for humanity a little bit. But I guess thus is the struggle of humans. So Esteban, glad you were able to jump back on and ask some questions here. Esteban says, how much did they respect the laws of society, respect nature versus respecting laws of nature itself? Respected the laws of society to respect nature versus respecting laws of nature itself. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe you can give me some clarification on that question. How much did they respect the laws of society to respect nature? So maybe it's the laws of society to respect nature versus respecting the laws of nature itself. Like maybe as if society was not telling them to respect nature, would they actually respect nature? Maybe something like that. You know, I don't know. I think either way, whether it's an innate feeling of wanting to respect nature, or if it's something that's instilled in people through society, either way, I think obviously, I feel that that's an important trait to have. But you know, the fact that there are elements of society that would foster a purposeful disregard for nature, because it idealistically opposes a viewpoint that is pro-nature. To me, that's beyond a belief, you know, that someone would do that kind of thing. But that's where we are in our society. Again, we can't go past identity and look holistically at this fishbowl that we all live in and shit in and try to do stuff in, and we think it's so huge, but we have an impact, you know, like when we talk about extinction. You know, there's times when people thought we would never kill off the bison. I know, well, they're not extinct, but passenger pigeon, you know, there's various things that have gone extinct. The rhinoceros, you know, that are no longer here. That DNA code, that specific structure of information is no longer with us because of human activity. And we always say, and we have this group of people that say, oh, well, how arrogant are you to think we could have an impact on this earth? The earth is so big and only God has an impact on this earth. And I'm just, people have such a shallow understanding of the systems on earth that, yeah, on one hand, they're resilient, but on the other hand, the butterfly effect is a bitch, and we don't know everything. How arrogant is it to think you know everything? So I would take the arrogant position that, yes, we could have an effect, and no, I don't know everything. So therefore, I'm actually humble. So it's like the classic example of driving your car, like turning your car engine on in your living room and saying, hey, everything's fine. I mean, I'm not dead. It doesn't look like I'm dying. And then waiting for the symptoms of carbon monoxide poison before you do something. You know, what would you do? You could say, well, this car is so small, that the engine's so small that, and the amount of gas that's consuming at idle is so low that it won't have much of an impact. But then give it a few hours, and the next thing you know, if you're sleeping on the floor, carbon monoxide is going to be up in your brain and you're out. So we have this distortion of reality that fits a narrative, right? And so some people wouldn't even ever watch Princess Mononoke because it talks about nature and it has these kinds of you know, what do you call it? Storylines, etc. So yeah, I think we see the lesson that if we don't recouple with nature, that we're going to have an out of control death on our hands that will destroy the earth. And I think there might even be some people that have thrown their hands up and said, yeah, the earth's gone to shit, and they literally are trying to buy their way off the planet. And basically has, you know, if that's the case, we have now sealed our fate as being no better than fungus infecting bread. And because we are no better than fungus infecting bread, our last, you know, hollowed out husk of a planet that we eventually will have, that last bit will be, you know, consumed by the droves that are left on Earth, while the elite, you know, super DNA goes off into space to create, you know, to push the human race. And who knows, maybe in the grand scheme of things, those people die out in space because of crappy, you know, shit that was made in you know, as cheap as possible. Hopefully capitalism comes and bites them in the ass. And you know, the rest of us either come figure that shit out and get back with nature and have a Prince Ashitaka moment and get that shit connected, or we just let the death continue and play the role of Jigo and just get yours while you can, and when it dies, and who gives a shit if I have kids or not, or if you have kids or not, or who cares, right? So I don't know. Hopefully we've learned something about Princess Mononoke a little bit. Esteban asks, let's go ahead and close out here with his question. What about nature correcting itself? What do you think the impact is of natural disasters as a cleaning mechanism? You know, and that's a good point. But the thing about natural disasters is it's nature causing this thing. So one thing that's in a way ironic is a lot of, you know, when we have an oil spill and the oil is killing living beings, this oil is made of once living beings. So this distillation of the remnants of life now become the agent of future death. It does occur in nature, but not to the scale that we're able to unleash, right? And also some of these natural disasters, some of the natural disasters go along in, they occur and nature does heal itself. And I think that's embodied in the Princess Mononoke, where nature does heal itself at the very end and sort of heals over to some degree the scars of the human civilization or Iron Town that was once there. So nature, of course, has a massive ability to propagate. It seems like once the Rube Goldberg mechanism of life, or whatever you want to call whatever life is, this DNA pursuit to replicate and continue this itself, its own information, or some iteration therein, for life to just simply exist. I don't really know what it is, but it is extremely powerful. And that, I think that's the main point, is that we can let nature heal itself, but we can't do it while nature can't handle us. Nature has to work on its own time frames. And there are mass extinctions that happen due to natural causes that aren't because of us. But the thing is, we could either accept that because of us, we will then destroy species and make major change on the earth, just as nature has done. And that's why they've called this epoch of the existence of the earth the Anthropocene, the anthro, era of time. That people are affecting the world and in this time. And instead of nature having that effect, it is us having that effect. So the difference between us and nature is, obviously nature is, well, I mean, unless this is up for debate, does nature have a conscience? Does nature consciously clean itself? When you say natural disasters as cleaning mechanisms, what does it mean to clean? I think they are a result of natural systems, and they don't have intent. It is a causal chain of events that occur. I don't think natural disasters are made or intentionally evolved as cleansing mechanisms. I think nature lives in spite of those culminating effects and causes that create the tornado, that create the earthquake, that create these, or algae blooms, or whatever, if it wasn't a human caused algae bloom. These kinds of things happen because of certain circumstances that happen outside of nature's control, that are of the earth or of something else. Could be a solar flare or an asteroid. These things are outside of nature, and nature lives and works around it despite it. So like Bruce Lee has espoused, or maybe it's a Buddhist thing, but if what he said is to be like water, and nature works in a way like that because it adapts to the new environment, right? Put water into the teacup, it becomes the teacup. You put a teacup out in the woods, it will become part of the woods. You put water into a teapot, it becomes the teapot. You put the teapot out in the woods, it'll become part of the woods. And so Esteban brings up a really good point. Nature can correct itself, but we've decoupled from nature. So nature, in a way, the spirit of the forest, if we're going to go back into Princess Mononoke world, the spirit of the forest can't lead life anymore. We have decapitated it, and it no longer is the shepherd of life. The shepherd of life is now humans, and we can either choose to destroy it or we can choose to live in harmony. And we only got a glimpse of the headless, dumb beast of death. In the movie, we get a glimpse of that. We're living that. We can see the end times of that if we don't become Prince Ashitaka and bring the spirit's head back and repair the spirit of the forest. So I want to thank you, Esteban, for putting your comments in there. I mean, this show is nothing without those comments. It just turns into me rambling about crap. And hopefully I got Esteban. Hopefully I got your mental juices flowing a little bit. Got you thinking about some big questions. I think you asked some really good questions there. I think we live in another contradiction, a time where we, on one hand, we want to think deeply about things, but on the other hand, our minds are lazy. And so we want to summarize things as simply as possible. So sometimes we have to take a little bit of these deep dives into, and I would say that this was really a very superficial look at a lot of these problems. And hopefully, as people like Esteban and people jumping in on the archives watch the video, hopefully they'll be leaving some comments and some questions of their own, some answers of their own that can maybe steer the conversation. We can deep dive into some of the aspects of what we talked about today. So on that note, give you an outro track by Sep Rock Beats. And of course, this has been another Sunday Sesh of the Boyd. Don't let your perceptions be fooled. Always question everything and seek the truth. And remember, the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. So that's vigilance over power, not over a wall, not over a border. It is vigilance over power, fellas and bellettes. Sisters, I don't know. Dames, nah. Dudettes. Yeah. So thank you again for joining the Boyd, and until next time, peace out. Play a bomb that's been deep. Play a bomb that's less than deep. Play a bomb, play a bomb that's less than deep. Play a bomb that's been deep. Play a bomb that's less than deep. Less than deep.